They said we'd be home by Christmas. I remember laughing at that. We all did. By May, the laughter was gone. We were trapped on the beaches of Dunkirk, hemmed in by the sea on one side and the German army on the other. And somehow, I was one of the last men to leave. The gulls circled overhead, quiet as if they too were waiting for orders that never came. We'd been marching for days, retreating through France. Every village smelled of smoke, not from cooking fires, but from homes left burning. The roads were jammed with civilians, mothers pushing prams, old men on bicycles, children holding on to whatever they could carry. I remember a boy, couldn't have been more than 10, dragging a wooden toy truck behind him. It hit every stone on the road, clattering like distant gunfire. When the bombs came, he dropped it and ran. When we looked back later, the truck was still there. That sound has stayed with me more than the explosions. We were soldiers of the British Expeditionary Force, trained to fight, not to run. But orders were clear: fall back to the coast. We told ourselves it was temporary, that we'd regroup, push back. But deep down we knew the tide had already turned. At night we lit no fires. We slept in barns, rifles in our hands, boots still on our feet. Every hour someone whispered, "When's the morning?" Sometimes we'd hear German voices on the wind, laughter, songs, like ghosts drifting closer. Sleep became a luxury, fear became routine. When we reached the beach, I thought I'd never seen so many men in one place. Hundreds of thousands, packed shoulder to shoulder, faces coated in sand and exhaustion. The sea was calm, but the sky never was. German aircraft screamed overhead, dropping bombs in long, methodical rows. Each explosion threw sand and body parts into the air. We'd throw ourselves down, then get up again, still waiting for ships that never seemed to come. The smell of diesel, salt, and blood mixed into something you could taste every time you breathed. Even now, when I smell engine oil, I think of Dunkirk. Some prayed, some cursed the generals. Most just stared at the horizon, at England, invisible beyond that grey line of water. The tide went out and came back in, washing over helmets and rifles half buried in the sand. The dead were lined up near the dunes, faces covered with torn coats. One chap I knew, Jenkins, was sitting beside his mate's body, talking to him softly, as if the man could still answer. None of us said a word to stop him. Then one morning, we heard a different sound. Small engines, hundreds of them. Boats, fishing boats, pleasure yachts, tugboats. They were coming for us. It wasn't the Navy, it was them, civilians. Men with caps and cigarettes, steering through smoke and debris. I helped load the wounded onto one, a trawler from Dover, its name half burnt away. "You boys get home, we'll keep coming back." And they did, trip after trip. We watched them vanish into the mist, and for the first time in weeks, someone cheered. But not all of us could leave. Someone had to hold the perimeter while the rest evacuated. That was us, the 2nd Battalion Royal Warwickshire Regiment. We set up along a canal, rifles and one battered Bren gun. The ground shook for 2 days straight. Every hour someone fell. Every hour we asked if the boats were still coming. The air was thick with smoke and screams and the crack of rifle fire. We barely saw the enemy, just flashes between ruins and hedgerows. I remember seeing our Bren gun jammed from sand and Private McCleary hitting it with his hand, shouting, "Not now, you bloody thing!" A moment later, he was gone. One heartbeat, he was there, the next, just gone.
When the order finally came to retreat, there were maybe 30 of us left. We moved at night, silent, past burning trucks and bodies half buried in sand. The sea looked black, like oil.
At one point, we passed a wrecked Spitfire, half buried in the dunes. Its wings were torn, cockpit glass shattered. Someone had carved a single word into the sand beside it. Home. No one spoke. We all saw it.
We reached the pier just before dawn. A destroyer was taking its last load. I could see the captain waving his arm, shouting over the engine noise. I ran. Behind me, gunfire echoed off the dunes. Someone grabbed my arm. My sergeant. He was hit in the leg, couldn't move. I carried him as far as I could, but the plank was lifting. I jumped, felt hands grab mine, and the ship pulled away.
The sea behind us burned orange from tracer fire. Men in the water called out, voices fading as the distance grew. One of the sailors beside me crossed himself and whispered, "God forgive us for leaving them." No one replied.
We landed in Dover that afternoon. People cheered as we limped off the ship. They handed us tea and blankets and called us heroes. I didn't feel like one.
That night, I sat by the harbour and watched the tide roll in. A young nurse sat beside me. She asked if I wanted sugar in my tea. I told her I couldn't taste anything anymore. She said that'll come back. It never did.
All I could think about were the men still on that beach, the ones who never saw the boats come back.
In my diary, I wrote, "We were the lucky ones, but the sea will remember them all." I like to think it still does. Years later, I went back to Dunkirk. The sand had shifted, the water cleaner, the town rebuilt. Children played where we once bled, and when the wind blew, I could almost hear those engines again. Small boats pushing through the mist. Not heroes, just men who refused to look away.
This was the voice of Private Thomas Hale, 2nd Battalion Royal Warwickshire Regiment, one of the last men out of Dunkirk.
Their voices may fade, but their stories will not. You've been listening to Echoes of War. Subscribe and let history speak again.